a young lawyer. He's a proud graduate of Central High School, Georgetown College, one of those Ivy League type schools, I think. Didn't Bill Clinton go to Georgetown?
He did. He
Uh,
did.
and then
Patrick Ewing too.
Patrick Young, oh yeah, oh yeah. And then from there, he had the misfortune of going to UK law school. So we're going to try to avoid all the UK talk. But Fred's a up and coming young lawyer, and we got some topics to talk about tonight. We want to talk about the Declaration of Independence, and one of the most powerful documents ever written by man, and it established the greatest country in the known to man. And the portion we want to talk about and try to discuss and maybe uh, have some interesting conversations about is the preamble. I guess it's to the Declaration of Independence. And it says, "We hold these truths to be self evident, that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." Now, if we have time, we want to talk a little bit about policing in the minority community. And Fred was a public defender and has represented a lot of folks. And he did it how long, Fred?
I did it for 5 years.
Yeah, he's a fine young lawyer. He's got a big future ahead of him, and he had to put in some time with the public defender's office, and did a good job representing clients. So we're going to talk about those two things. It may be, and it may be a little more serious than past shows when I was the guest and talked to Carl. Because Carl and I used to yuck it up a lot and talk about old times, and Carl and I go way back. Now, what I guess we might want to do is to start into some music. And as you know, I didn't let Fred choose the music. Normally the guest gets to choose the music. But and I told DJ Ice, who's with us, or who's running the show here.
Yes, yes, I'm here, Judge. I'm here. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great.
All right, I'm
And
glad to have you.
what we need to do, if y'all can get us some kind of feedback, I need to know what the sound sounds like to you all out there listening to this. Because in the studio, the sound is absolutely awesome. And what I got is I got three songs that you may know or may not know, but there are three really nice tunes. And what I tell them, Fred, is I say, I'll come back, but I have to find three songs that I think are worthy of the show and that people might need to hear and uh, and introduce the audience to some sounds that they've not heard. So anyway, you need to tell your friends we're getting started up here. We're going to do have a nice conversation, and I think it's going to be a thoughtful conversation and a conversation this community needs and help us understand about this country we live in. I hope. So the first song is Ann Peebles, and it's "I Can't Stand the Rain." And DJ Ice, my family, we went down to Memphis and we went to the Stax Museum, and it's an awesome place if you've never been there. And they give you headphones and they'll walk you through the history of Stax records. And I think one of the things that I'm a little concerned about. And at that time, we went and, of course, visited to the National Civil Rights Museum and the Lorraine Hotel. And I was really a little bit uncomfortable when I did not completely understand that we were going to have the show, the day after the 50-year anniversary of the assassination of Martin Luther King. And I think maybe, Fred, after the song, maybe we ought to talk about Martin Luther King a little bit, just to honor a great man.
Yes, sir.
So anyway, DJ Ice, I'm talking too much. We need to hear some music. People need to get a break from me.
Tell them they could. We on live. We on UStream. They could call in 502-384-6483 if they want to talk to you guys. Also, you probably got some thumbs up if they told you that the sound is good, because
Yes,
I'm
somebody
pretty
did.
sure. I'm pretty sure the sound is good because
Excellent.
I checked it myself.
Well, it's awesome in
You
here.
know, I had to make sure
We
you
trust
sounded
you.
good,
We
man.
trust you.
So we got the I Can't Stand the Rain, and then we're going to go to a commercial break, and then we'll come back to some more Conscious Fever.
So you have these things here that are popping up, and I don't know what exactly they mean, but
I can't stand the rain against my window, bringing back sweet memories Yeah, when the rain, do you remember how sweet it used to be? When we was together, everything was so grand. Now that we parted, there's just one sound that I just can't stand. I can't stand the rain against my window, bringing back sweet memories. I can't stand the rain against my window, 'cause he's not here with me. Whoa, empty pillow where his head used to lay. I know you got some sweet memory, but like the window, you ain't got nothing to say. Hey. I can't stand the rain against my window, bringing back sweet memories. I can't stand the rain against my window, just keeps on haunting me.
Okay. Now, that was his pick.
Get off my
So you wanted to get the spin, right, Mr. Moore?
Yeah, let's get some new school on it.
Okay, what he gonna counter you, man, with the new school Missy Elliott.
Me, I'm super fly, super duper fly, super
can't
duper
stand
fly.
the
Me, I'm super fly,
against my
super
window.
duper fly,
I
super
can't
duper
stand
fly.
the
Me, I'm super
against
fly,
my
super
window.
duper fly,
I
super
can't
duper
stand
fly.
the
Me, I'm super
against
fly.
my window.
When the rain hits my window, I take in me and Timberland. Ooh, we sang a jangle. We so tight that you get our styles tangled. Sway your do-si-do like you loco. Can we get kinky tonight like Coco? So. You wanna play with my yo-yo? I smoke my on the D-Lo.
I can't stand the against my window. I can't stand the against my window. I can't stand the against my window. I can't stand the against my window.
Beep, beep. Who got the keys to the Jeep?
You can't handle the truth.
You have a story to tell, and your story could be intimate and personal or something you want the entire world to see, because a tattoo is the most unique and personal form of individual expression. And body art is a master's craft. So when you decide to let somebody draw on your canvas, you need to seek out the truth. Truth Tattoos have been creating world-class body art for over 10 years, and there's nothing the Truth can't handle. Check out Truth Tattoos on Facebook and Instagram, and you'll see there's other tattoo artists, and there's the Truth. Stop being lied to and book your next tattoo appointment with the Truth at 502-408-8403.
502, stand up. These are just jokes. No harm is ever intended. Absolutely no one is to be offended. Is bringing you his monthly comedy show held at the Hilton Garden Inn Hotel. Big Mike's Comedy Blast, 2735 Crittenden Drive. Again, that Hilton Garden Inn Hotel, 2735 Crittenden Drive. Big Mike's Comedy Blast. And on stage this month, we have comedian Marvin Hunter.
Louisville, Kentucky. It's your boy, comedian Marvin Hunter, man. April 14th, man. April 14th. Don't miss it, man. Big Mike's Comedy Fest at the Hilton Garden Inn by the airport. We're gonna be there showing our natural behind, man. I'm trying to get some of that Kentucky bourbon y'all have up there, man. Make sure y'all show up, man. You don't wanna miss this. I'm gonna keep my zipper all the way down so it'll be easy for me to take my pants off and show my natural ass. But you know how I get out. But it's your boy comedian Marvin Hunter.
For this event, you must be 18 to enter, 21 to drink. Doors open at 7. Show starts at 8:30. Tickets can be purchased from Eventbrite or Jam Bust Balloons and more, or She Likes Beauty Salon. DJ Ice on the ones and twos. And remember, always, clapping is optional, but laughter is a must. Get your tickets now.
You are listening to Conscious Fever, hosted by Carl Price on 97thebetfm.com.
Okay, so we're back. So call your friends, let everybody know we're on live, and I've got Fred Moore with me here today. And again, I didn't really, plug this in that we were going to be on the day after the 50th anniversary of Martin Luther King's assassination. So it might be appropriate for us to have some conversation about Reverend King. What do you know? You got anything, Fred, that you want to start up with? Or?
So when I was younger, as you said, I'm from Louisville. I went to church on Hancock and Market at Refuge in Kentucky, and they used to have these sort of programs during Black History Month where each person would, I guess, cite a different part of a speech from a famous African American or civil rights leader, and most of the time I was fortunate enough to sort of draw the straw doing Dr. King. And when you're younger, you'll memorize the speech and you'll say the words and you may even watch it on TV, but you don't really appreciate the seriousness and the sort of enormity of what he was saying until, in my experience, you get older. So yeah, I read about Dr. King, studied him. Didn't really start studying him until college, but when you get older and you experience things and you see how life can be, and you see how different people can be oppressed by the system and by the government, it just, to me, takes on a completely different role and meaning. He was doing this. It's 2018, and we have problems now, obviously, but he was doing this in the heat of the Jim Crow era. So it's just impressive. And we're incredibly lucky to have had him sacrifice himself to the cause.
And he died at 39 years old, and it's hard to tell what might have, where we might be today had he had a chance to continue being the leader that he was. And again, Fred, I'm with you on this in that he's one of the most powerful orators that we've ever had, and just a genius at emoting. Just presenting arguments that were, it's not just logic, it's to touch people's hearts and to lead people in a particular manner, in an absolutely gentlemanly manner towards, sort of an inescapable conclusion that things have to change. And what amazes me is, so on the anniversary of his death, you can get on, Twitter or some of the internet and news feeds, and you can review maybe some interviews that you hadn't seen before. And I saw one yesterday that was really amazing. And part of what his story was, and again, he's talking in the 60s. Okay, so it was 68, was it? Yeah, 68. He dies in 68. Sometime before that, I'm talking about 65, they were asking him, just what is the issue here, and how come African Americans cannot be on a track to succeed? And one of the things he said was that during the time, so you have the Civil War, you have the Emancipation Proclamation, you have the freedom of free the slaves, but the African Americans were not given a chance to succeed economically. At the same time, America's opening up the West. They're giving everybody, you go out there, there's land out there, go out and take this land. And so they're offering it to people, but not African Americans. And had they offered that at the time, I guess, all of the Louisiana Purchase and, these Oklahoma Sooner races or whatever the world they call them, had they opened up the opportunity to be a landholder and to make, to strike out and make it on your own to African Americans, we'd probably have a different world. And I had never seen it before.
That was that's an interesting video. So not only that, there was the westward expansion, but you also had the Reconstruction and post-Reconstruction eras of the South, which was obviously not as damning as slavery, but it was the next step up from slavery. African Americans couldn't hold office; they couldn't vote. So it's a really, from a sociological or even an economic perspective, what do you do when someone's been enslaved for 200 years, over 250 years, and all of a sudden you say, all right, slavery's no more, and you sort of take that away. And not only that, there's no sort of mobility for economic, for economic benefit for African Americans. So that's what he was speaking to. He said, yeah, obviously the Irish had trouble when they came over here, but not the same kind of trouble as African Americans, nor did the Italians. I mean, they all essentially came through Ellis Islands and didn't have to go down south and work for free.
In chains.
Right.
So, in the assimilation, they talk about, there was assimilation, and then, that's really a false kind of narrative and a false comparison. I mean, there were signs where it's the Irish need not apply, and Italians may be a little swarthier and have olive skin. But as Dr. King says, that at that same interview, he talked about how that African Americans were stigmatized by their color, and that and denied an economic opportunity that was available to everybody else. We had all these immigrants; they come rolling in and flooding into the United States, and I'm saying it was a great thing. But at the same time, immediately after the Emancipation Proclamation, there wasn't this welcoming arms. It's not, look to the West. We have acres and acres of land that we need people to populate and make America what it is today. So, and I had not, he was just brilliant. He was just brilliant, and it's unfortunate. Now, I'm older than Fred and DJ Ice, and I was alive at the time of Dr. King's assassination. And it was a tough time. You didn't know that there were semi-riots in Louisville, right? Mm-hmm. And they charged 6 African Americans in Louisville with some kind of conspiracy crime. It was a fabulous trial. It never went to trial. And Sam Hawkins is still here. And I think Laken Cosby, Reverend Cosby's father, was charged as well. I think, but there were 6, and one of the 6 was a FBI informant that they brought from out of town. And they always talked about during the Civil Rights Movement, they always talked about all these outside agitators, right? People would flood in the South and try to help, with voter registration and trying to take advantage of the power of the ballot box. And it's like there's all these people that are coming, Yankees and outside agitators. Well, in Louisville, they had this one guy, and his name was Cortez, and he, was, every time there was a meeting on a street corner and everybody's attention, it was a very tense time, and so there would be gatherings in the West End primarily, and he'd be up there rabble rousing, and come to find out he was a true outside agitator. He was employed by the federal government and the FBI, and
wow.
And he was found out, and the case fell apart, and it was
was it federal court?
No, it was in state court. Yeah, but at any rate, and
so yeah, that to mention. So I'm a bit of a sort of political nerd and historian, and 68 was Robert Kennedy was running for the primary for the Democratic Party, and I read, at least obviously, my parents were like 2 years old in 1968, so I wasn't around. But I mean, I've read that in pretty much every major city there were riots because of the death. It was my understanding that it was the night of the Indiana primary, and he gave a speech in Indianapolis. And it's one of my favorite speeches in American political history. And in the end of it, he says, "Let us dedicate ourselves to what the Greeks wrote so many years ago, to tame the savageness of man and make gentle the life of this world." And, at the beginning of the speech, he talks about how Martin Luther King obviously was a beacon for peace, and he can understand, and he empathized with how African Americans, the way we've been treated in this country for so long, would be angry and be willing to lash out and react violently. I mean, he understands that completely, and that may not even be an unreasonable position, but that he himself had a member of his family that was killed, but that person was also killed by a white person.
And then Bobby Kennedy gets killed shortly thereafter,
right.
Not much further, and he made this speech in in the black community. I mean, it was one of these things where it was a courageous moment for him to do that, and that's one of the reasons I remember being up, you know, 68. I couldn't vote at the time, but
barely, right?
Barely, but I had sort of an argument, or there was a conflict in my home because my parents were McGovern fans, and then and he made a fabulous speech, and and they talk about it was a courageous speech because he went into the community. It's not like he's standing in a TV station making a speech. No, so I think Indianapolis did not, as I recall, did not have any riots.
No, that night they didn't, and he broke the news. There was no Twitter or smartphones or anything.
Yeah.
So he had
No
actually
social
heard
media.
while he was on the airplane. And it's my understanding, as I was reading the story about the speech, he wrote down. There's a section from a poem by a Greek poet named Aeschylus that he cites in there. Even in our sleep, pain which cannot forget falls drop by drop upon the heart, until in our own despair, against our will, comes wisdom through the awful grace of God. And the point of the play is essentially learning through suffering, right? It's called the Oresteia. But he's writing that speech like on a piece of paper on the plane, and gets off and just really freestyles it. So,
Wow.
Well, I'll tell you. All right, so if we could, Fred, one of the things that I was trying to deal with, and it's been for a year or so, is to try to get my mind around this whole thing that our forefathers, who we revere, who established this country and prepared the Declaration of Independence and our Constitution, which is a guideline on how to live and how to govern. And they did this, in 1776. So we've been using this, and we've been using it as a milestone, a touchstone on how to, govern and how to live in America and how to appreciate being part of the American experiment, as they say. But again, we get into this, and we hold these truths are self-evident, that all men are created equal. And at the time of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence, 41 of them were slave owners. And even at the time, there were discussions to say, okay, all men are created equal. And what exactly are you talking about? How about all of these slaves that are in America? And in 1776, 20% of the population of the 13 states were slaves. So 20% of the population were slaves. And I think we get back to Reverend Dr. King when we talk about what is it, the arc of the moral arc of the universe bends towards justice.
Yeah.
So I think what we are doing as a country is, this moral arc. We consider ourselves sort of, superior to the world in that we are a democracy, and we're happy about our economic system. So we are, believe ourselves to be superior, and we are moving towards this moral arc of the universe bending towards justice. But at the same time, I'm not real sure that, as Dr. King says, he has seen the promised land, but I'm not sure we're close. And we've got a lot of things to do to try to make this, to live up to sort of the founding statements that we have in the Declaration of Independence, that all men are created equal. They are endowed by the Creator by certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It should be life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for everybody. And I guess at the time, there was a whole lot of people that were not given an opportunity to life or liberty, or certainly not happiness. So it's just, it's sort of a conundrum, all right? So
Yeah.
it's, here we are, our founding fathers who we revere, and they have this beautiful document with these powerful, powerful words. And at the time it was signed off on, it wasn't exactly true. So I haven't really gripped on that. And part of it is, do I give them credit? How about this, Fred? Do we give them credit for not understanding the words necessarily, or the ramifications of the words? Okay, if this is what we're going to live by, all right, number one, we have to deal with, as Reverend Cosby says, America's original sin, slavery. We denied women rights to vote and other opportunities, and if you even get into the gay and lesbian, population that we're, discussing these days, is that part of moral arc of the universe? Or
Well, that's a large question, but to start off on the to start at the beginning, I can never forgive anyone for owning slaves. I can't do that. But what I can do is the document itself, I think, is maybe the greatest sort of declaration, as it were, of independence, or sort of mission statement for a country I can ever think of. To me, it's perfect. And what's beautiful about it is, obviously, we acknowledge the original sin of America. We acknowledge the slavery. We acknowledge the oppression that America, the government, has caused on its citizens. But it always allows us to sort of strive to be better. Dr. King used, the words of the Declaration in the "I Have a Dream" speech. Somewhere I read. I mean, he used cadence to sort of turn the idea to mainstream America that this is also for us too. So as much as I see, obviously, the oppression, in our country and even in the world, I always sort of try to have an optimistic view that because of that document, those truths are eternal and sort of reign to me supreme and stretch from 1776 to 1960 to 2018 to hopefully, however long America lasts. But the interesting thing that you said was sort of us holding together, or us sort of seeing ourselves as superior to other countries in the world and other dynasties that have sort of reigned supreme. As much as, I sometimes obviously feel different because my skin is different, because I may be treated differently, or because, obviously people who look like me are, I think, treated differently by the criminal justice system. I do think the one thing that we have together, at least in theory, is the idea that everyone should be equal. And even if you talk to, in my opinion, anyone in West Louisville, whatever, at the end of the day, we're all Americans. Like, we're all Louisvillians, we're all Kentuckians, we're all Americans. We're supposed to have these ideas and these beliefs, no matter if you went to DeSales or Central or Western or wherever, that sort of are common, and that's equality. And I think that that's very important. And I think ultimately, at the end of the day, that's what's going to win. I can't be a pessimist, because we have to live and go out every day, and that would be a miserable life. But
no question about it. And I think, there's always hope, but part of my thing is that we're still striving. But again, you get into it, and we start with the document, and they say these beautiful, powerful words that are designed to be the, how this government, this nation is going to proceed through the world. And we certainly, I think Americans, we believe that we are, we have this moral superiority because we do believe that all men are created equal, and that we have a democracy where everybody has a voice. And again, you get into it, and then you talk about depriving people of the opportunity to vote. And even in the current days, we have these voter suppression laws that are absolutely insane and are designed to prevent people from having access to the voting booth, which is the fundamental, process of, America. But I do think, again, I am hopeful. I am truly hopeful. We do live in the greatest country in the world, and the greatest country the world's ever seen, the greatest country the world will ever see. And if we aren't leading the charge, then, this world will end. If we're not there to, to try to bring some of the truths that are self-evident. But we got some work on trying to deal with the self-evident truths that they identified in 1776 that we have fallen way short on. Yeah, this conversation is way heavier than Carl and I yucking it up. I don't know, DJ Ice, do you think we need some music just to calm down a little bit?
Ron Hicks said, "Hey, Judge."
Yeah.
Some of the comments.
Ron Hicks.
Judge getting old,
Yeah. We can go into
Black
those.
people must see ourselves amazing.
Pablo
Then
Picasso.
others will. Yeah, that's a great one. See us as amazing. And I'm telling you, there ain't any question about it. I think we need to, for me, there are amazing black people in this world. I mean, they're truly, I mean, just have been and always will, and just terrific leaders, and we have to acknowledge them and support them. I mean, as human beings, and I think, but part of it is you need the confidence, you need the, just the basic belief that I am, that I am a man. Right, the sign, I am a man, and I have a voice, and I will be heard, and I will not be denied. And I think that's the power. And again, those signs came from the strike that was in Memphis at the time of Dr. King's death.
Well, I know you want to go to commercial, but before we go, I think Karen Payne and Lori Moon have it really on point. We're really, really divided. We've allowed ourselves to become, in my opinion, divided. We can talk about that more after the commercial and music break, but we've really allowed ourselves to let what makes us uncommon or what we disagree on divide us rather than we agree with more things than we disagree with. Judge Delahanty is a Louisville fan, and I'm a Kentucky fan. But he and I agree with way more.
Yeah, we're going to have to put him out, Judge.
Right. I think so.
Well, I like winners, so.
Oh man, here you go.
But we agree with way more things than we disagree on. Me and you can find a Republican out there. We're going to agree on way more things than we disagree on. We can't allow yourself to be controlled by what other people want you to think, because they're in it for their self-interest. If they can divide us, then they're at that point they won because that's step one, and all I have to do is get you to side with them instead.
And I think there's been a design, and we're going to live through a process in the next year or so that is going to identify some things that people have a strategy to divide us for their own self-interest. Okay, let's go to Pablo Picasso. This is a song Pablo Picasso. It's by a guy named Citizen Cope, and this is one of Rania Toom's favorite guys.
Really?
Citizen Cope.
Okay.
And he was in town a while ago, and to try to set the song up, you got to listen. They say country music tells a story. Well, this song tells a story, and I think it's about a man who has fallen in love and become infatuated with a painting, a Pablo Picasso painting, and his interactions with the people who are there to enjoy the painting or perhaps prevent him from enjoying the painting. All right, DJ Ice, I think we're done.
The woman that I love is 40 feet tall. She's a movie star. She's all in the papers, and everywhere I go, people hand me quarters and they pat me on the back. They treat me like I'm famous. I never leave a side, 'cause they can be dangerous. And when the night arrives, the light hits her features and the cars drive by just so they can see her, and she never bats an eye when someone takes a picture. And Mr. Officer, if you come to take her, then that means one of us gonna end up in a stretcher. Say, Mr. Officer, if you come to take her, then that means one of us gonna end up in a stretcher. Say, gonna end up in a paper, gonna end up in a paper. If I had a pistol, I'd brandish it and wave it. She's the only one alive that knows that I'm not crazy. She's gonna testify on my behalf down at the Navy, so I can get some peace and provide for my babies. Out a stick and a bottle, I pretend I got a razor. Helicopters and cameras are shooting for the station. They say that a wild man defending his lady, but for some odd reason they calling you a pain and say, Mr. Officer, if you come to take her, then that means one of us gon' end up in a stretcher. Say, Mr. Officer, if you come to take her, then that means one of us gon' end up in a stretcher. Say, if you come to take her, then that means one of us gon' end up in a stretcher. Say, Mr. Officer, if you come to take her, then that means one of us gon' end up in a stretcher. Say, Mr. Officer, if you come to take her, then that means one of us gon' end up in a stretcher. Say, Mr. Officer, if you come to take her, then that means one of us gon' end up in a stretcher. Say,
All right, Carl. Are we back on? I don't know what we're doing here, DJ. All right, so what's going on, Carl?
502, stand up. These are just jokes. No harm is ever intended. Absolutely no one is to be offended. Is bringing you his monthly comedy show held at the Hilton Garden Inn Hotel. Big Mike's Comedy Blast. 2735 Crittenden Drive. Again, that Hilton Garden Inn Hotel. 2735 Crittenden Drive. Big Mike's Comedy Blast. And on stage this month, we have comedian Marvin Hunter.
Louisville, Kentucky. It's your boy, comedian Marvin Hunter, man. April 14th, man. April 14th. Don't miss it, man. Big Mike's Comedy Fest at the Hilton Garden Inn by the airport. We're going to be there showing our natural behind, man. I'm trying to get some of that Kentucky bourbon y'all have up there, man. Make sure y'all show up, man. You don't want to miss this. I'm going to keep my zipper all the way down so it'll be easy for me to take my pants off and show my natural ass. But you know how I get out. But it's your boy, comedian Marvin Hunter.
For this event, you must be 18 to enter, 21 to drink. Doors open at 7. Show starts at 8:30. Tickets can be purchased from Eventbrite or Jam Bust Balloons and more, or She-Locks Beauty Salon. DJ Ice on the ones and twos. And remember, always, clapping is optional, but laughter is a must. Get your tickets now.
You are listening to Conscious Fever, hosted by Carl Price on 97thebeatfm.com.
Say that I'm checking in from Orlando, Florida, in Central Florida.
All right. We back. Carl Price.
No, but I thought that, how you doing, DJ Ice?
All right, man. How you doing?
I'm okay.
Yeah, I know you're okay. I saw you with the sun shining, the videos going. You got the man, you in Orlando.
Checking in early in Chicago. I thought we were at the club or something.
Yeah, I thought
well,
he
you
was
know
at the
what?
club.
Everybody gathered around, big crowd gathered around and said, what's the show? What is the show you're talking about? And I said, just tune in to 97thebeatfm.com tonight.
We've been a little heavier than normal, Carl. We haven't been laughing it up too much. We've taken on some serious subjects.
They said you haven't been laughing it up.
No, normally, I was telling Fred that we cut up a little bit from me and you, but Fred and I were taking on some weighty subjects. He's quoting Greeks and everything. I mean, he's a highly educated man.
He's an extremely highly educated man. I used to, as a prosecutor, the only public defender that ever feared me was Fred Moore.
Oh, there we go.
I mean, that I ever feared was Fred Moore.
That's he's been really nice. He's been too nice.
He came in, I don't know if I ever told you this, Judge, but he came in one day and told me a certain place where I could take my offer and stuff.
I've always found it to be a gentleman.
Oh man, I didn't know you were gonna say that on.
I would tell you were not in the conference rooms, and some of the stuff that he said to me, he used to tell me what to do with my offers.
Well, Well, see, Carl, you spend a lot of time picking fights. I mean, I just want to put that out there. You know, there's a way to handle things, and I think Carl's got to check you out, and he's going to.
He's testing you. You know,
right.
you know when you're in high school. So he went to Central too. You know, sometimes there's that junior or senior that just wants to see how far they can push, see if they can bully you. He just wants to see where you're going to stand up, and that's really what Carl.
And you got to stand up, and then it works out okay.
And you stand up, and Fred stood up, and it worked out. But I will tell you, Fred, absolutely, you got it right. Back in the day, that's what we used to do. We used to offer people 369 days CD for 2 years, and the new PDs had no idea what we were doing.
Yeah. That's kind of messed up.
Yeah, I'm not sure that.
369 days.
I'm not sure
just send it on the air.
Yeah.
Just no filter.
Well, I'm glad you got out of the prosecuting job and started making money, Carl.
Yeah, I am. I enjoy it, but these boys down here are draining me with money. So
well, Disneyland,
I'm glad that this
did
is
you go
the
to
last.
Disneyland?
We went to Universal Studios, but that's just as bad as Disneyland these days. I mean, everything costs, and if you want the privilege of getting on the ride quicker, you have to pay $300 more per person. I mean, it's a ridiculous.
That doesn't matter, Carl Price. You have the money.
They got a skip line. That's like VIP.
Yeah, that's right. And inside
Carl,
the ropes.
I heard you're really thriving in Trump's America. Like, those tax breaks are really helping you out.
I'm still thriving in Obama's America. I don't think Trump had anything to do with it.
Okay.
Yeah, he's just teasing you now, Carl. You're getting all upset there. You're bucking up. I'm glad you're whatever it is, 1,500 miles away. I have to jump in between you.
Yeah, no. But listen, but I'm not getting upset. But what I think about Trump, you know, Trump is just having a stormy of a good time.
Well, I don't.
But anyway,
I don't think he's enjoying it too much these days, Carl. And I think his days might be numbered. So we'll see what happens, and I don't know.
Well, I would tell you definitely his EPA chief's days are numbered. What do y'all think about that?
And there's a gang of them. I don't know how you can keep anybody. And
Mr. Pruitt, Mr. Pruitt was renting a condo for $50 a month from an EPA lobbyist. Yeah. How do you do that?
Well, you know, Obama's pals couldn't get away with it. That's for sure.
I absolutely could not get away with it. But anyway, I just thought I would call in and check in. We are sitting at a restaurant here in Orlando, and I think they're about to bring our food. I don't mean to, you know, wet y'all's whistles, but I'm just saying they're about to bring our food, and we're about to have a meal here. Oh, she just now brought the biscuits. Those biscuits are good down here, by the way.
Oh, look, Carl.
He's rubbing it in.
I guess. I don't know. Biscuits at 9:42. I don't know, Carl. It's a life. I guess you fellas have a big night ahead of you.
Okay, so we ordered the appetizers immediately. That's probably why.
Right, probably right. Yeah, absolutely. But anyway, but you all enjoy the rest of the show, and I look forward to being back on the air next weekend, next Thursday.
Yes, sir. Thanks for calling in. Appreciate it, Carl.
See you, Carl.
Have fun.
Well, Fred, next time, I mean, I know you're paying favorites. You're coming in for Judge Delahanty. Next time, I need you to come in for me.
I will.
Friend.
I'll come in for you, too.
Well, I have to be there to referee. I can see that already.
Yeah, you may have to.
I know. It's the youngsters and the old ones. I think Carl's feeling the heat there, Fred. He feels somebody sneaking up behind him for some of this.
No, those are big shoes to fill. Thanks for calling in, Carl.
All right, Carl, we're gonna let you.
All right. Okay, well, y'all enjoy. Good night.
You too.
All right, good night, man.
All right, thanks, Carl. All right, Fred, I don't know where we were, what we want to talk about. We want to talk about the divisiveness of the country. What are we talking about? What do you want to talk about?
Well, we were talking about that, and I just mentioned that we have more, as I said, in common than we do, you know, that differentiates or makes us different from one another. I'm worried, and I don't know if it's one of those things where every 40 or 50 years America likes to get drunk and then elect some crazy people and some, you know, stuff happens. So I don't know if this is a reactionary time in sort of American political history, or I don't know if this is just a sign, you know, in every great dynasty, you know, there's a point of crossing the proverbial Rubicon or point of no return, where the society just sort of turns on itself or folds on itself. And my concern is that we may be at that point, because I don't see as much love as I used to see. Maybe I'm 30, so maybe when I was younger, stuff was just romanticized because I hadn't really experienced life yet.
Well, Carl, Fred, well, we're going to get back to your story about the hope, just hope in the world. And we.
They know my name.
Conscious Fever, what's going on?
Hello, I wanted to ask a question.
Okay, so make sure you turn your feed down.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Turn your news feed down. Turn the live feed, the video that you're listening to. Turn that down because it's a delay.
I got you. It's turned down.
Okay, now when you talk to us, you'll be talking in real time. Okay.
What's on your mind, sir?
So what's your question?
Hello. I wanted to know, like, what's the difference between having a lawyer and then, like, as far as like verdicts and stuff go? I want to know, like, why do you get such and such X amount of time with you not having a lawyer, and then if you got a lawyer, you get your time cutting like more than half just because you got a lawyer. Like, what do they say? Like, is it like are they cool with the lawyers or something, or do they owe them favors or whatever? Like what? What's the difference? Why do you get 5 to 10 years if you don't have a lawyer, and then if you got a lawyer, you get probation?
I think he's asking.
Like, well, I want to know what do they say to make it a difference.
Oh, we're going to try to answer the question. Fred's going to take the first shot.
Yeah, I'm going to assume some things and tell me whether or not I'm assuming. So I'm just going to public defenders are lawyers, right? So I don't know if that's what you're talking about, but I just need to say that they are lawyers. Now, there is a difference between, there are good lawyers, there are bad lawyers. There are good public defenders, there are bad public defenders. There are public defenders that are better than private lawyers, you know what I mean? That's just the reality of the situation. Now, I've never been a prosecutor. I don't have it in me to send somebody to jail, so I can't say what motivates them. I can say what I know that I look for in a case and what prosecutors generally look for. And honestly, I mean, sometimes it just depends on the reputation and talent of the lawyer. It depends on the case and the facts. It depends on the prosecutor. I mean, I think there are a lot of variables to answer your question. But you know what? That is one of the most insightful questions that I've ever had somebody ask me as a lawyer. Is, let's say you have lawyer A and lawyer B representing client 1 and client 2 respectively, and they're both same record, same charges. They could come out with completely different backgrounds. And that's part of the reason, or outcomes. That's part of the reason why I'm not just saying this because he's sitting next to me. That's part of the reason why I really like and support Judge Delahanty, because I can say from my experience, I represented poor people, so people who couldn't afford lawyers, people who've been abandoned by society, marginalized, and people with really bad records. Like, usually my clients had terrible records and probation and all that, but I had a fair shot in Judge Delahanty's court, and that is what matters to me, because you can go in some courtrooms and you don't have that shot, and that's a big deal to people who look like us and people who are from where we're from. So to answer your question, man, honestly, and every lawyer is going to tell you this, and I know I'm talking too much, it depends.
Let me jump in here for a second, Carl. And I don't know why. No,
Fred.
I'm talking to Carl. Fred. And, sir, I think to answer the question, and I think Fred was on it, and the point is the outcome that you get in a case, it depends on a lot of things, but the only part that the lawyer has involved that can help you is the experience of the lawyer. And there are public defenders who are as good a lawyers as money can buy. There are other lawyers who are very expensive and who are very good lawyers and may be able to bring, more resources to bear. If you have a wealthier client, you may be able to hire experts. You may be able to present a more elaborate defense. So when the prosecutors try to decide if there's a plea bargain, and 95% of the cases are plea bargained out, And when they're plea bargain, I think your point is, when they're plea bargain, how does some lawyers get better outcomes than other lawyers? And I don't think it's public defenders versus private attorneys, but it's experienced lawyers. If you have experienced lawyers, prosecutors are going to say there's a greater risk that I might lose. Plus, I may not enjoy my trial if an experienced lawyer is really putting me through my paces. He's making it hard. He's going to challenge me. He understands how, or he or she is going to challenge me and going to make me work very hard. And I think that the prosecutor says, I'm not sure I can get the same verdict, the same outcome with an experienced lawyer, so I may try to settle a case on a more favorable way to an experienced lawyer, whether the experienced lawyer is a public defender or a private attorney. And I think that's what I've seen, and I've been at this for a long time, and because there are a lot of lawyers that will not try a case. They'll defend somebody up into a trial, so they will plea bargain them or whatever. But if it comes to a trial, the prosecutors know they're not going to go to trial, so they can muscle them up and make them, require them to take a harsher penalty than a lawyer who is prepared to go to trial. And so I think that's the best answer we have for you. And we appreciate your call.
Thanks for the call, man. That was a good question.
Yeah, that was a great question.
All right, thank you, sir. All right. Now, are we running out of time? When are we going to shut this baby down there, DJ Ice?
Whenever you want to, man. You can hang out as long as you want to, man. Right. We're going to break the rules.
All right, breaking the rules.
We break the rules for you, man.
Well, I know about it. Yeah. And man, I think we're having a decent conversation about the whole thing. Now, and I don't know if we want to talk about the divisiveness or we want to talk about shift gears and get into policing in America today.
You run the show, Judge. You pick it. You decide.
All right. I don't really want to talk about Trump too much, except to say our country is too strong to not survive just about anything. We are too strong, and as Fred says, we have too much in common. We have, the American heart, the American dream can withstand a lot of challenges. So I think we need to just be hopeful, and then again understand that we do have these commonalities. And at the end of the day, we are Americans. So I don't know. When I suggested the topics, I wanted to, and again, this is another kind of an issue that cuts both ways. And I was talking about policing in the minority community. And let me start off, Fred, because I know you got some good points on this. And so I'm in arraignment court, right? In arraignment courts, I have people that are in jail that have been arrested and have not been let out of jail. And I have to read the citations, right? So that's the charging document. The police pull somebody over, and they have to write down certain information that outline, what the person's been charged with. And I'm telling you, I get more citations that begin. When I look at it, okay, so I say, okay, Mr. So-and-so, you're charged with marijuana, drugs, guns, who knows what. And it's, I say it's 10 o'clock at night. It's on, Garland Avenue. And the narrative says, the defendant was in the listed car. The listed subject was in the listed car. He failed to use a turn signal, turning on to Garland. We pulled him over, and then, we smell smoke billowing out of the car, marijuana smoke, so on and so forth. Or the license plate was not illuminated. All right, so if you never noticed this, on the back of your car, you're required to have these small light bulbs that light up your license plate. So, and it happens often. It's 10 o'clock at night. It's always at night. There's a license that's not illuminated. It doesn't say that there's any kind of driving issue or any other thing. It's just, there's either a failure, the license plate is not illuminated, or the failure to use a turn signal. Now, from there, and I don't know, again, I'm not saying that I have an answer. I have a lot of police officers who are friends of mine. I consider them friends. They have a very, very difficult job. But what happens is when they pull somebody over for one of these minor offenses, these are violations, not having illuminated lights or not using your turn signal. I guess if marijuana smoke wasn't billowing out the windows like Cheech and Chong, the police officer would just say, "Sir, did you realize that your license plate, your bulb burnt out?" And they'd say, "Well, no, I didn't, officer. I'm sorry," whatever. And maybe these you get sent on your merry way. But if there's, if I think that the police are more aggressive in the West End for trying to determine whether people have guns and drugs in their car. And I think, and I'm not saying I'm speaking for the police, but I think there may be the reason may be they're more aggressive is to try to eliminate the homicides in Louisville. And the homicides are all, 95% of them are related to guns and drugs, right? If you're not involved in drugs, you're probably, you're less likely to end up a victim of a homicide or shoot somebody. And if you have guns and drugs in your car, is it reasonable for the police? Is it, this more aggressive stance in the West End or Newburgh, is that reasonable? Is that something that the community needs to try to prevent homicides? And I don't know where you want to go with this, Fred. You can jump in and take it in any direction you might want to go.
Sometimes they target people.
Yeah, I mean that Miss Payne is not far from the target there. This conversation is an entire day. I could spend weeks talking about it. Like I said, I spent 5 years working at the PD's office, and I had, say, a week, 5 to 10 cases with the same fact pattern. And nobody apparently, a lot of people apparently don't have their license plate illuminated, so get that checked. But this is one of those questions, I think, where you sort of have to take a step back and say, do the ends really justify the means? I kind of think you don't live in the same city when you have people, and I know police officers. I've met and worked with hundreds, if not thousands of them in my experience down at the courthouse, and there are some great officers out there. And actually, I don't blame the police department for the stance. I blame society, because we want to get the guns and stop the murder by any means necessary. So we're going to bypass people's constitutional rights and people's reasonable expectation of privacy to get to that, right? Because if you're living in St. Matthews, or you're living in the Highlands, which is where I live, or you're living, in Anchorage or Prospect or wherever, how Joe Blow down in West Louisville, how they're treated by the police and how they're pulled over, that doesn't affect you. What you don't want to see, you just don't want to hear about Louisville having as many murders anymore, really. You know what I mean? So you're not going to press your political leaders to say, hey, let's try a more community-oriented approach to policing, which is what I would hope we move to. De Blasio gave a speech, or gave an interview.
Mayor of New York.
Mayor of New York gave an interview and was talking about how one of his fundamental goals as mayor of New York was to sort of transform the police department into a community-based policing unit where people walk a beat, officers walk a beat, and officers go by and introduce themselves, and they stop by barbecues, and they're known by members of the community. Because when you develop trust between the community members, they're going to tell you who robbed who and who killed who and who shot who and why. But if there's distrust there, then I think that's what sort of leads to the tale of two cities, where you can life in West Louisville is a lot different than it would be living on the east side. And like I said, I actually do not blame the police department there. I'm going to say this, and it's not Judge Delahanty, but I think the primary culprit are the courts. What they've allowed to happen, how they've allowed case law to develop, and sort of define reasonable expectation of privacy and where it is and where you live. To me, they're the primary people who are responsible for it, but I don't want to talk too much about it because I still practice here in Jefferson County.
Well, and again, if you talk about de Blasio, the mayor of New York City, one of his the reasons he was elected is that he eliminated this sort of stop and frisk policing in New York City. And in New York City, apparently there was a policy that police could just come up and walk up next to anybody for no reason and say, okay, I need to know if you got any guns or drugs on you. And you couldn't say, I don't know what you're talking about, I don't want to talk to you. And they could stop and frisk you. And what the story was is that they did in fact target African Americans or people of color more often than your average Caucasian or whatever. And he managed to win his race for mayor, committing the police department to changing that. And it results in a lot of unnecessary arrests. And again, if a person, it's kind of insulting. It's kind of insulting just to believe that anybody just can come up and just jack you up for any reason in the world, like the stop and frisk, right? Now, but what's the conundrum again is, we have to do something about the homicides in Louisville, and the police department is being aggressive, and I believe that most of the homicides are black on black, and I believe that they're drug related, most of them, and I think that what their effort is okay, if there's somebody driving down the road at 10 o'clock at night and that isn't absolutely correct, they're going to have a stop them and have a conversation. And again, the conversation may be, did you realize that you're required to put on a turn signal when you do this or that? And part of it is, if you have a tinted window, if your windows are tinted, you believe me, you're going to get pulled over. So I think a lot of it is, parents or whoever's responsible in helping these kids buy automobiles, or providing automobiles, or if a kid buys an automobile, if he wants to get some kind of a tinted windows and a car that's going to attract a lot of attention, he may get a lot of attention from the police department, and the car has to be absolutely correct just to avoid confrontations with the police. And the police are there for the purpose, I think, of finding out if people have guns and drugs, and to try to remove them from the streets. So you have this policing aspect, and then you have, again, the expectation of privacy.
Yeah, and I get that. I mean, look, murder is bad. You won't hear an argument from me there, and thank God that we have police that are there to protect communities. But the issue is, it hasn't worked. In the past 2 years, I think Louisville's had either the highest homicide rate we've ever had and the second highest, and I can't remember specifically the numbers. But they were practicing this form of policing during those 2 years and the years preceding it. What's happened more recently is I do know that the FBI has formed a joint task force with the Louisville Metro Police Department. I know that they've gotten some guns off the street and taken who they believe to be bad guys off the street. So that's fine, and I commend them for that. But the issue is it doesn't. To me, that level of aggressiveness does not change the murder and the drug culture in the city. Look at the perfect example, the greatest TV show of all time. Look at The Wire. I mean, they operated that way in the city of Baltimore for 20, 30 years. And it's not just Baltimore, it's Louisville, LA, San Fran, any major city. The aggressive policing that doesn't change the murder rate. That doesn't change the way drugs come into the city. It just doesn't. And until we figure out what does, we're
and I think
continue the same rate.
If you hang on for a second, I think what Fred's talking about is there are police models, right? Police models. How do you police the community? And if you have this community-based model that de Blasio's trying to implement in New York City, it might be more effective in dealing with the issues. And I think Fred's absolutely right. The homicides were, like 240, something like that. We didn't have one a day, but we had 240.
Yeah,
all right. How you doing? We have another caller.
Yes, sir. I have a question for you. Why is it that why do law enforcement, why do they get paid administrative leave when someone has been killed in the line of duty?
Or they kill somebody in the line of duty.
Yes. Why do they get paid administrative leave? Like a paid vacation, if you will.
I got you. And this is another topic that, again, if you get into... Okay. But I think that the point there is this. Anytime an officer discharges a weapon, whether there's a... Hang on. Let me do this. Anytime an officer discharges a weapon in any manner, shoots and misses, wounds somebody, causes somebody's death by a discharge of a firearm, the police officers automatically, put on administrative duty, or I can't remember what they call it, but they're relieved of duty. They're no longer available to be police officers until there's a thorough investigation. And now this is where it gets kind of squirrely, because the police officer has a due process rights. So the point is, the police want to investigate. They want to determine whether there was an appropriate use of force. Was even the firing of the weapon an appropriate event for the police officer? They take it very seriously. Police officers should not, fire their weapon unless certain circumstances occur. And what they do is they conduct an investigation, and they pay them. And believe me, police officers, they do not enjoy. There are police officers who've worked for 30 years and retired and never fired their weapon during the course of their employment, and and they don't take any joy in shooting people. I don't think. And when I say that, there have been some publicized shootings around the country that are, absolutely shock the conscience. But I think to directly answer your question, they're put on administrative leave so the police department can conduct an investigation to determine if the officer acted appropriately in discharging the weapon. And so that's the answer there to that question.
I got you. I appreciate that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Watch out, the guy's fired up. Anyway, I tell you what, while we're here, why don't we get to the last record and then tune, and then we can maybe continue on a little bit later. I got to get up and go to work tomorrow, Fred. I don't know what your plans are. Okay, is that okay, DJ?
Yeah. Just give them closing arguments, and then we'll play the Into the Wild, and we'll be into the wild ourselves, huh?
I think so. Well,
I appreciate you stopping through and sitting in for Carl, Judge. Also, young attorney Fred.
Thanks for having me on, man.
Plus, Fred and I know some people, and we got some people in common that we, family members and stuff, and it's been fun. And like Carl said, y'all welcome to come back. Judge he's always welcome to come back. He's like the most popular guy on 97 to beat. I mean, I thought I was pretty popular, but and be on the lookout for Judge Delahanty's mixtape coming out.
I'm gonna get DJ Ice to put that together for us.
Yeah, man. What you think about his selection of music?
I'm very impressed.
You're impressed, aren't you?
You ain't heard half of them, Fred.
No, man.
I think Elvis is next.
No, we don't have Elvis.
No.
And I don't want to offend anybody out there who loves Elvis, but I can't really. He doesn't make my top 55 or so.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You're not a hound dog?
No, I mean, some of his early stuff was better than the other. Anyway, let's move on.
Okay, let's get into this one, and we out, man. Appreciate y'all. Don't forget, every Thursday, 9 p.m., Conscious Fever, right here on 97tobeatfm.com.
Let me say a couple of things about this. This song is called Into the Wild. This is by a guy named Eddie Vedder. Eddie Vedder is the front man for Pearl Jam, but he has his own, solo career, and he was down at the Bourbon and Beyond this last time, and it was absolutely beautiful. And he does things where he doesn't play with a band. It's he's got an entire album or record CD that's him and a ukulele for anyway.
Wow.
Now this one here. He wrote a soundtrack for a movie, and the movie was about a young man in California somewhere who decided that he was going to strike off into the wild, and by himself he goes to Alaska, and he wants to survive by himself in Alaska. It's a movie. The movie's okay. This song is absolutely awesome.
Isn't he eaten by a bear?
Yeah, that's right. No, that's a different guy. This guy gets poisoned. But so I ruined the movie for you. Thanks, Fred.
Oh.
But anyway.
No, I didn't ruin it. You corrected me. We could have gotten away with it.
These tricky lawyers, I'm telling you. Anyway, this is Into the Wild by Eddie Vedder.
Cup, I I ask silently. All my destinations will accept the one that's me, so I can breathe. Circles they grow and they swallow people whole. After lives they say goodnight to wives they'll never know. And a mind full of questions and a teacher in my soul. And so it goes. Closer or I'll have to go. Holding me like gravity are places that pull. If ever there was someone to keep me at home, it would be you. Everyone I come across in cages they bought, they think of me and my wandering, but I'm never what they thought. Got my indignation, but I'm pure in all my thoughts. I'm alive. Wind in my hair, I feel part of everywhere. Underneath my being is a road that disappeared. Late at night I hear the trees, they're singing with the dead overhead. Leave it to me as I find a way to be. Consider me a satellite forever orbiting. I knew all the rules, but the rules did not know me. Guaranteed.
.97 The Beat FM.
You gonna learn today? 502, stand up. These are just jokes. No harm is ever intended. Absolutely no one is to be offended. Is bringing you his monthly comedy show held at the Hilton Garden Inn Hotel. Big Mike's Comedy Blast, 2735 Crittenden Drive. Again, that Hilton Garden Inn Hotel, 2735 Crittenden Drive. Big Mike's Comedy Blast. And on stage this month we have comedian Marvin Hunter.
Louisville, Kentucky. It's your boy, comedian Marvin Hunter, man. April 14th, man. April 14th. Don't miss it, man. Big Mike's Comedy Fest at the Hilton Garden Inn by the airport. We're going to be there showing our natural behind, man. I'm trying to get some of that Kentucky bourbon y'all have up there, man. Make sure y'all show up, man. You don't want to miss this. I'm going to keep my zipper all the way down so it'll be easy for me to take my pants off and show my natural ass. You know how I get out. But it's your boy, comedian Marvin Hunter.
For this event, you must be 18 to enter, 21 to drink. Doors open at 7. Show starts at 8:30. Tickets can be purchased from Eventbrite or Jam Bust Balloons and more or She-Locks Beauty Salon. DJ Ice on the ones and twos. And remember, always, clapping is optional. The laughter is a must. Get your ticket.